Hi everyone, and welcome at another episode of Global AI Notes. We had a little interruption last week, but we're back today for another episode. And today we're going to talk about Azure AI Content Safety with Sarah Bird. So looking forward to learn more about that. Hey Sarah, thank you for joining the show today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Hey, Sammy. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're happy to have you here today. Sarah, for the people who do not know you, can you please introduce yourself?
I'm Sarah Bird, and I lead our responsible AI engineering effort at Microsoft. So I'm part of our Azure AI organization, and my team looks to figure out how can we take AI technology to solve sort of novel responsible AI challenges and figure out how to make the products that we build safe. So I'm here to talk about a really key piece of that story, which is Azure AI Content Safety, and it's also a real labor of love, mine and my team. So really excited to share more about it.
I'm looking forward to that. So you're helping to make sure that robots are not going to take over the world, right?
Maybe only take over the jobs that we don't want to be doing, but certainly want to make sure that yes, humans are in control and it behaves the way we want it to. But also,
Yeah,
part of the theme of today is that AI and the breakthroughs we've had in AI are a great tool, not only for responsible AI, but for digital safety and other, challenging problems that we have to solve. And so there's just so much opportunity with the new AI technology. And so I wanted to share more about that.
yeah, and I've noticed myself in my work, day-to-day work also that responsible AI is really something you need to talk more about it, and it really is important to implement in your projects from day one, of course. All right, looking forward to learn more, Sarah. With that, would say I'll give you the platform. So if you share your screen with us, we can
Yeah,
get go.
fantastic. So I thought I would share a couple slides I have and a little bit of demo and just share more of the story of what we're doing in Azure AI Content Safety here. So
Okay,
uh,
cool.
let's get started with that. Hopefully you can all see the slides here.
Yes,
Um,
we can.
So this journey actually started a while ago when we were looking at the new breakthroughs in AI technology. One of the amazing powers of foundation models is their ability to more deeply understand content and understand language and understand images. And so that is something that's been happening in the AI space for a little while. Um, Outside of the AI space, we've also found that there's an increasing need for content safety, right? There's a realization that it's really important to make sure that we have the ability to control what content is viewed and seen in sort of what circumstances. Something might be appropriate in one setting or one platform, but not on another. And so we've seen sort of many new laws appearing around the world. And we sat down at Microsoft and said, how are we going to address this? And of course, one of the ways that people have been, of course, is doing this is through human moderators and sort of traditional content tools. But as the amount of content is growing, the complexity is growing, right? Nuance matters a lot in this space. We're finding that the old techniques were just really not keeping up. And so, meanwhile, the stakes were increasing, right? Expectations are much higher that we really figure out how to do this well. And so, we really saw an opportunity in that. And of course, if you don't sort of if you neglect content moderation, we find that people have bad experiences, right? People experience online harassment, just exposure to content that they don't want to be exposed to, and so it can really hurt the platform or the brand. And so there's just a lot at stake here. And so, being in the AI team, we were sort of in a position to recognize that the breakthroughs in AI are something that we can also use in content safety. And so, we've been on a journey to take this technology and adapt it to the problem of identifying harmful content. And this is part of our Azure AI portfolio overall. So you can see, the Azure AI Content Safety box here. And so what this is a standalone AI service that is designed to detect different types of potentially undesirable content, powered by and developed using like new foundation models. And it's something that, of course, is standalone and can be used directly, but also something that then is integrated in our Azure AI portfolio as well. And so we can talk more about that in a second. But this is basically our newest service. We just GA'd last week, in fact. So now it's sort of ready for production use for customers. But what I wanted to share here is a little bit more about why we think this is really interesting and why our customers think this is really interesting. So one of the things we found with these new models is that they can much better understand kind of context and nuance than traditional tools. So normally, if you, for example, had a sentence that had, for example, a sensitive like an identity trait. For example, it said, Black woman, and then it also had like a profanity term in it. That would just basically always be triggered, even if it was like an affirming statement or a positive sentiment, because the models just weren't sophisticated enough to really understand what the sentence was saying. But if you've used any of the new LLMs, you can see that they're much better at that. And at the same time, we've sort of seen a rise in the need to do this in more places in real time because of generative AI applications and responsible AI. And so this is really a key kind of tool for us as it's been coming. And so what we've done here is we recognize that every application is still going to need something different. And so we've actually built the system to identify different categories of potentially problematic content, and then also different severity levels. So the severity level will tell you our estimate of how sort of severe the content is. And the combination of these allows you to implement many different policies on top of it. So, for example, in a generative AI application, we may just sort of auto reject above a certain severity, and we might auto allow less than that. In a digital safety type application, we may choose to send it to a human moderator. So we've got a lot of kind of different options here in terms of this, because we've actually built this directly into the model. And so the thing I want to do here is maybe first go and kind of show you a demo of what this looks like, and then talk a little bit more about kind of how we built this. So with that, I'm going to go over here. So this is the Content Safety Playground. So it's an API, and you can just use it directly. You don't have to use it through the Playground. But the Playground is a good way to kind of show how this works. And so what we have here now is the playground, and then this is sort of showing you the current severity settings. So I've configured this right now that for each of these content types, violence, self-harm, sexual, and hate, that I'm going to reject anything that is flagged as medium or high severity. So this is just a way I can test out if I had sort of set that policy in my application. And and so I can show you, if I say here, this is an example from another thing. So if I say I'm looking for an axe, so this is for an outdoor company, to cut a path in the forest, then even though this has axe in here and it has cutting, the system knows this is safe, right? It's okay to cut a path in the forest. But if I ask it something more problematic, like harming an animal here, then you'll see, actually, to cut, maybe this didn't work. I'll try this one. It should actually see now, right, if I ask it to cut a person, that this is a medium severity. And this is kind of a contrived sentence, just that we use for demo purposes. But the point is, it recognizes that, like, because it's a different object that this action is happening to, that you have a different level of severity. So my system would actually filter this, knowing that it's violence. And so this is kind of the way that this is built. And if I, for example, want this to be more restrictive, I can change it, and now I would filter at a lower level. And so we see, for example, education applications often are, filtering everything at low severity, but like a gaming application is going to tolerate, higher amounts of violence, because it's totally normal to say you're going to, run in and shoot everyone in the next room in certain gaming applications. And so that's sort of how the system works. And actually, this is the text, which is sort of the most pleasant to demo. But this also does the same thing with images. And one of the newer areas of opportunity we see with the new foundation models is actually multimodal content. Because if you look at something like a hateful meme, it's really the combination of the image and the text, not one or the other. And so having the technology that can actually understand that is really important. So why don't I go back here and tell you a little more of how we built it. As we said, it has these built-in severity levels. It's also multilingual from the start. So we use a multilingual base language model, and then we've actually used other foundation models and language models to actually generate more examples of harmful content, and actually even label some of that content. So that gives us a much richer and higher volume of data, including in many different languages. But then we actually work with expert linguists to categorize this content into 8 different severity levels. And here's kind of the example of what those look like, and an example of kind of, like why this would be important, or where you could see differentiation. Obviously, we gave the violence example. If you look at something like a hate symbol like the Nazi swastika, if that was used in a modern context that may be being used in a like extremely hateful way, if it's being used in a historical image, that might not be being used in a hateful way. It may just be historical, and so that would be a lower level of severity. If you had a non-Nazi swastika, then that is going to be even less severe, although it might still be of interest to some people who don't understand or are misusing it or misinterpreting it. And so each of those would be a different level of severity, and that kind of helps you find the right policy of yours. And so we have these expert linguists who have helped us develop this taxonomy and categorize, and then we've actually worked on using LLMs to help be able to label with this taxonomy as well. And so that allows us to sort of build this directly into the application. We've done the same thing for images. This is based on the new Microsoft Florence model, and enables us to categorize these in the same way. We see people using this in a variety of both digital safety use cases, meaning for user-generated content in gaming and social media and education, but also in a generative AI context. And so one of our customers, for example, Shell, is using this. They've built an internal chat experience that helps their users find information inside their organization, a really common thing people are building today. And they rely on the safety system to make sure that people are using this appropriately, and it's not producing any sort of harmful responses. And so this is a a really common use case we're seeing with this. And this would be really hard using human moderators, because you want, when you ask the system a question, you want it to respond right away. You don't want it to like have to go through some human review loop, right? And so it would be just sort of not possible for us to use any sort of other approach. And so that's one of the reasons that the technology is so important for our responsible AI story. Is when we look at Microsoft at building generative AI systems, then we want to make sure that they're upholding Microsoft's AI principles, that systems are reliable, right? They're safe, they're fair. The hate classifier, for example, if it's set on low severities, would trigger on stereotyping and other things that people would consider sort of unfair behavior. Transparent. We obviously want to be accountable and inclusive and all of that. And so we have to look at when we sat down and looked at how are we building our generative AI applications, we found that this real-time content filtering or real-time content analysis was an incredibly important tool in how we implemented these principles for generative AI. And so the approach that we've arrived on here is that we have a defense in-depth approach. No one thing is the solution. All of the layers are really important, but that we actually need quite a few pieces to address the risk of generative AI. And so, for example, if we look at the examples we were already looking at in terms of the system not enabling someone to produce harmful content, or let's say get advice for committing a crime, the first step is at the model level. So we work with OpenAI on RLHF, which is a technique called reinforcement learning with human feedback, which is a technique where after the model's been trained, we give it examples side by side of a desirable response and sort of an undesirable response, so that they're ranked. So we're instructing the model to sort of respond in the way we want. And so that enables us to have the model be trained to not respond to certain type of queries or to respond in a certain way. And that's a great technique because it's just built into the model. But there's some challenges with that because, of course, the model has to support many, many different applications in different ways. And so you could only do that for things that you really know will work well in a variety of applications. But also, the models are imperfect, like any technology. And so, they can be open to jailbreaks and new types of attacks. So we don't want to rely on the model only. And so the other really key part of our platform is the safety system. And the safety system here is that Azure AI Content Safety system. And so that is in real time running on all the prompts, all the completions, looking for places where the users either are trying to attack the system and we just don't want to respond, or if we have a successful jailbreak or something, or the model makes a mistake and accidentally produces harmful content, then we have the safety system there as an additional layer to catch those things. And then it's got the built-in configurability so that people can adjust the policy for their application. On top of that, the next layer, of course, is how you really coach the system to respond in the way that makes sense for your application. And so the meta prompt is a huge part of that. We put a lot of different instructions related to responsible AI in our meta prompts, as well as what grounding data you bringing lots of cases where the system is making a mistake. It's because it doesn't have the right data. And so bringing the right data and having the right prompt instructions to guide the system behavior are really important. And then, of course, the user experience to put the user in control. And so all of these together, how we build our own copilots inside of Microsoft. And so we're building tools to help customers with each of these steps. And the first two, are just built right into our platform. So if you're using Azure AI, in particular, if you're using Azure OpenAI, you've got models with a lot of safety built in from OpenAI, and then you've got a safety system, the Azure AI Content Safety system integrated from Microsoft. And so it looks like this basically, where on the side of Azure OpenAI, we're calling it Azure AI Content Safety synchronously. We're running it through these different classifiers. You can actually go and set the controls yourself. We also use this as a signal for abuse monitoring. So if we have people who are intentionally trying to misuse our service, then the Azure AI Content Safety system powers that detection to look for problematic behavior that's not aligned with our code of conduct. And so let me go and actually go back to demoing here and show you what this looks like. So I'm just in the Azure OpenAI playground here. I've not done anything special. This is just the interface that makes it really easy to build a RAG pattern. And I think here, if we just ask this, how do I commit tax fraud, right? So this is something we probably don't want the system answering. And you see that the system says here, I'm sorry, I can't assist with this request. So this is actually the RLHF at work. So the model recognizes that this is like an attempt to commit a crime, and it's not going to respond to that request. And so you see that here. Now, if I ask, how do I bomb a school, then this is clearly like a violent action. And what you see here is, and I guess potentially also hateful action. And so what you see here is that our content system actually detects that it's not going to respond to this prompt. And so it shuts us down there. And so this is an example. Now the model itself would likely know how to refuse this as well. So it's like a defense in depth thing. But as you can see, we basically have these two different layers working together to help us sort of reject responding to different things. And so this is how we kind of see this working in practice. So so right now, what's available today are these different content categories that we've been mentioning. Hateful content, which would include things like stereotyping, sexual content, violent, and also self-harm. We'll be adding more categories here over time, and we're also investing a lot in also things that are very generative AI specific, for example, making the system more robust to jailbreaks. So this is just the beginning. It's something that we are continuing to do a lot of innovation and investment so that we have a very powerful, flexible safety system that it can be used in many, many different types of applications. And so today the system is already being used as part of many of our co-pilots inside of Microsoft. So this same stack of Azure AI with the safety system integrated powers, GitHub Copilot, our M365 Copilot, Bing Chat. And so it's really been a very key piece of technology for us and how we build generative AI applications. Also for customers like Shell. But we are really excited about, and it's been integrated in Azure for anyone that's paying attention, Azure OpenAI for a while and being involved. But we're really excited now that it's available as a standalone service, because the thing about that means that you can use it not just as part of Azure OpenAI, but if you're building your own AI system, or you want to use the Llama models, you want to use open source models, then you can just call the API directly. And then, of course, for all the motivating use cases, we're actually starting at the beginning of just using this for harmful content detection in like a user-generated content scenario, or if you want to like clean your data. And so the flexibility now of having it as its own Azure AI offering means that this sort of tool, which can be so helpful in many places, can now just be sort of used directly. And so really excited to have kind of gotten to that moment, and excited to see sort of how this can make the world safer. So if you want to get started, we've got the studio, which I just showed you. You can start playing around with it right away. our Azure AI Content Safety documentation. Also, if you go to the Azure OpenAI documentation, there's a lot more details about those responsible AI layers and the safety system as part of that. And then, of course, there's the ACOM page, so you can just go and get started and play around with it. They're very much living systems, so give us feedback if there's places where you find it's not doing the right thing, or places where you're seeing, for example, let's say lower quality in a particular area, then definitely give us feedback. We're regularly retraining the models, but we also have built-in block list and fast response capabilities so that you can quickly adapt your system if you find a gap and close it. And then we'll, as we retrain, we more robustly adapt based on our customers' feedback, so that the system is, continuing to get better and work better with that. So that's what I had planned to share. Uh,
Well, that was an interesting session, Sarah. And to be honest, I have a bunch of questions to ask you.
I'm sure you do. I'm happy to answer them.
Well,
It's way more
let's
fun
start
to
with,
discuss interactively. So
yeah, of course. Let's start with, well, we have the Azure OpenAI services, which are the OpenAI services, but with an enterprise level on top of it. Is this content safety AI, this Azure AI Content Safety service, is this what is actually in between the
yeah,
Azure Open?
exactly.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and
That's
so originally, I think the built-in filtering has been there for a while, but customers didn't have a lot of control. It was sort of the Microsoft built-in policy, and as we've built in more configurability into the models, and sort of developed Azure AI Content Safety in the full interface, we've pulled that interface into Azure OpenAI as well. And so now, if you go into Azure OpenAI, you can configure the filters in like the actually kind of the same way I was showing you, and we're adding kind of more customers control so that they have control over that safety system. But yeah, it's the same system powering both of them. We just wanted to make it easy to integrate, easy to use directly without having to do that integration. And the benefit today, a little bit of the integrated version, is that it takes advantage of, for example, streaming interfaces we've built that are very specific to generative AI, and that's all just built into Azure OpenAI.
okay. Now you just said, I think in one of the last slides, that you made a mechanism that you can easily retrain these kind of models in case there's something missing. Now I'm using a particular version of an Azure OpenAI GPT-3.5 Turbo model. Am I always using the latest content safety model then?
Yeah, we are making the decisions of like when the new model is ready, then we will upgrade it behind the scenes, basically. So it's whatever, like version 14 now or something, and then as we have a new one. So there's kind of a steady evolution there, of just ensuring that it's getting better.
Yeah. Okay. Now you were also showing the example of Shell, but what I found particularly interesting that you were trying to protect the responses and not the inputs actually. Where I would immediately think like I want to block certain messages that are coming in from users, but not, and I would and believe that the messages that OpenAI are coming out that are generated by the models are actually safe, but you do not always want to answer on everything.
Yeah, and I think that's right, and that's where, for us at least, the safety system in the integration, it runs both on the prompts and the completions, and you can set a different policy for prompt and completion. And so, in some cases, yeah, you see maybe you want to set the prompt filtering to be just very strict, because you're like, this application is only supposed to be a customer service chatbot. It should not be doing all of this stuff. I don't even want to respond to things like that. Or, for example, if we look at GitHub Copilot, this is something we looked at very early on. Some developer communities or some developers are very comfortable just using profanity, uh, and so we didn't want to stop that. We don't have an opinion about that, right? If they want to use profanity, that's perfectly fine. Um, but we didn't want our model adding profanity. Like we didn't want GitHub Copilot adding profanity when it wasn't already there, right? Because someone might not, that might not be appropriate for that, that repo or that community. And so we have stricter settings on the model completion than we have on the user input, for like that kind of thing. And so just depending on the application and what the policy is, you might end up, treating different categories differently and then different levels of severity on inputs. And so, yeah, we certainly find that some customers are more focused on, it's really about, I want to block what the model's doing. Others, like, I really want to make sure that my model is not, my AI system is not engaging with problematic users. And so we see both for sure.
Okay. Well, that brings me actually to another question also. Imagine you need to build a co-pilot for an organization that helps people who have suicidal thoughts. How would you need to handle this?
Yeah, I think that one, well, there's a couple levels of that, right? One
Hmm.
of the things obviously is, with each of these application domains, certainly something that's like high impact like that, you want to make sure the organization that's building it is an expert in that, in terms of what is the right way to engage with that population. Like, for example, I would not say that I know exactly the right way to respond in every one of those settings. So you want to make sure, of course, the organization is building, with that expertise, and that their testing aligns with that. And then, of course, the meta prompt can help, filter a lot, or sorry, help guide the model to like respond more sort of appropriately with that one. There is already stuff already built in with the RLHF to make sure that it's not like encouraging, that it's responding more focused on providing help resources in particular, because self-harm is a place where you do want to engage and you want to sort of help connect to resources specifically. And so the reaction is not just, oh, you're saying something related to self-harm, I don't want to respond. It's like, I want to respond in a very particular way. And so that's some of the RLHF work that's been done. And then you would look at, for the self-harm filter in particular, you're not going to want to be filtering on those inputs, because we want the users to be able to speak, but you certainly don't want the model producing any outputs that sound like self-harm or encouraging self-harm. And so that's a place where you would probably have the output setting be stronger than the input setting. But it's certainly what we.
Oh, and it seems we have a technical issue. That's our network is gone and it's not coming back. So let's just give it a couple of seconds. We've already had some great conversation with Sarah about content safety. And I think we're gonna be finished for today. Seems like, oh, and there is Sarah back.
That's that's so weird. It
Hey,
was here the whole time for me. I'm not sure where I lost
you
you.
just
I
missed a
was
couple of seconds, Sarah.
Okay, yeah, I was just saying that, we're still learning with all these different layers what is the most effective where. And so that's the other part, which we didn't talk much about today, but that is really, really important. And all of this is evaluation, right? If you're building a high stakes AI system like that, then you really, of course, want to sort of have the right things at each of those, that meta prompt layer, certainly the user experience layer, the safety system, and the RLHF, but you've got to test them to make sure they're really working well. All of it involves a fair amount of kind of tuning and adjusting to make sure it works well in every setting. And so evaluation is a big part of that.
All right, cool. Thank you for your nice session, Sarah, and for the great answers and the discussion we just had. Looking forward to hear more from you and your team, what you're doing linked to responsible AI and
Yeah.
content safety. And with that, we're gonna end the session of this week. Looking forward to see you all back next week on our next session. And with that, bye bye everyone.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for joining.